I never thought signing up for a dance workshop would turn into the kind of story I'd be awkwardly recounting to my friends over beers, but here we are. So picture this. I'm standing in a tiny, slightly sticky studio with mirror walls that make everything feel way more intense than it should be, and my dance instructor, this guy named Leo, just held me too close. Like, way too close, and for way too long. Not the quick, professional kind of close you expect when you're learning how to salsa with someone. No, this was the kind of close that makes your brain short-circuit for a second, and your heart do that stupid little skip it's not supposed to. Let's back up a bit, because the whole me signing up for dance lessons thing wasn't exactly planned. I'm Jake, 28, software developer by day, and until about 2 weeks ago, I was the guy who thought dancing was basically just moving your feet awkwardly and hoping no one noticed you. But a friend of mine, Darren, who's been dragging me out of my comfort zone since college, sent me a text one Friday evening. Dance workshop tomorrow. You in? Normally, I'd have said no without hesitation, but something about that tomorrow made it feel urgent, like a challenge I couldn't just brush off. So here I was, standing in his studio in downtown Portland, dressed way too casually, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life or the best one. Leo, the instructor, was easy to spot. Tall, dark hair that looked like he rolled out of bed and still somehow nailed the messy look, eyes that were sharp but kind of mysterious, and a smile that was just the right amount of inviting without being cheesy. He greeted everyone with this warm energy that immediately made you feel like you belonged, even if, like me, you had 2 left feet. When he paired me up with him for the first exercise, I tried to keep my cool, telling myself it was just dance, nothing more. But then the music started, and as Leo guided me through the steps, his hand found my back, steady but light. Then, during a turn, our bodies brushed a little closer than I expected, and right when I thought it was over, his hand lingered there, and suddenly, I could feel his breath against my neck. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about dance anymore. I wasn't sure if it was the music, the way he looked at me, or just me imagining things. But something about that moment made everything else fade away. I wanted to pull back, but I didn't. I was frozen, caught between wanting to keep dancing and the unsettling thrill of how close he was. When the song ended, Leo smiled, but there was a flicker in his eyes, something unspoken, maybe a question or an invitation. And just like that, the workshop didn't feel like a dance lesson anymore. It felt like the start of something I wasn't sure I was ready for. I'm still trying to figure out what that moment meant, but one thing's clear. I signed up for a dance workshop expecting to learn steps, and instead, I learned how complicated a simple touch can be. And honestly, I can't stop thinking about it. After class, I found myself lingering by the doorway, pretending to scroll through my phone, but really just trying to process what the hell had just happened. Leo was busy chatting with another couple, laughing easily, the kind of laugh that could light up a room. I wondered if he noticed me standing there, stuck in my own head like a total dork. I wanted to say something, anything, but my mouth felt dry and my brain was on some embarrassing loop of replaying that close moment like a broken record. "Hey," Leo said suddenly, stepping into my bubble so close I could smell the faint scent of whatever cologne he wore. I blinked, caught off guard. "You did really well today, especially for your first time." "Thanks," I said, trying to sound casual, but probably sounding like a nervous idiot instead. "I'm definitely not as graceful as you make it look," he shrugged, that easy smile still there. "You improve fast. You just need to relax and feel the music." "Feel the music," I repeated, the phrase sticking with me more than I expected. It sounded so simple but felt ridiculously complicated when you didn't know how to actually do it. Leo glanced around, then leaned in just a bit, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. "If you want, there's an open dance night here on Fridays. No pressure, just people having fun. You should come." I was about to say yes before my brain caught up with my mouth. I hesitated, which must have been obvious because he gave me a look that was half amused, half encouraging. "Come," he said again, slower this time, like he really wanted me to understand. And just like that, I had made a commitment I wasn't sure I was ready for. I nodded. "Cool," he said, and with that, he was off, blending back into the crowd. I walked home in a daze, my feet feeling a little lighter than usual, but my head buzzing with questions. Why was I so affected by a guy holding me close? Was this just me being ridiculous, or was there something else? I told myself it was just the awkwardness of learning something new, the kind of stuff that comes with stepping outside your comfort zone. But deep down, I had no idea. The week passed in this weird blur of anticipation and anxious overthinking. I practiced the steps in front of my mirror, awkwardly trying to imitate Leo's fluid movements. I kept picturing that moment, his hand resting on my back, the warmth, the way the music seemed to pull us together. I caught myself smiling at my phone when his text popped up on Wednesday evening. Looking forward to seeing you Friday. Friday couldn't come fast enough. When I walked into the studio that night, the place was packed with people of all ages and styles, some twirling effortlessly, others like me, stumbling, but grinning. Leo was there, naturally, greeting everyone with that magnetic energy. When he spotted me, his smile widened and he waved me over. "Glad you made it," he said, pulling me into a quick hug that felt surprisingly natural this time. The music started, and the room filled with this electric energy. Leo paired me up with a few different people throughout the night, but I kept catching glimpses of him watching me, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but in a way that made my heart beat faster. Every time he touched my hand or corrected my posture, there was this subtle current between us, something unspoken but unmistakable. At one point, we ended up dancing together again. It was slower this time, a kind of tango that demanded more connection. And when Leo pulled me close, his breath warm against my ear, he whispered, "You're doing great, Jake. Just keep letting go, letting go." It sounded easy, but my mind was racing. What was I letting go of? My guard? My doubts? My carefully constructed walls that had kept me safe but also lonely? As the song ended, Leo didn't step back right away. He just held me there, like he was savoring the moment as much as I was. Finally, he smiled and said, "There's a lot more to dancing than just steps. It's about trust." Trust. That one word hit me harder than I expected. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about the dance anymore. It was about him, about us, about something I hadn't quite been brave enough to name. After the workshop, a few people gathered at a nearby cafe. Leo invited me along, and I found myself laughing more than I had in weeks. The conversation flowed easily, and Leo's eyes kept finding mine, making me feel like I was the only person in the room. At one point, he leaned over and said quietly, "I'm glad you came tonight." "Me too," I said, and meant it. Walking home later, the city lights blurred around me, but my mind was sharp with possibility. That night, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was stepping into something new, something that scared me and excited me all at once. And the crazy thing was, I wanted to see where it would lead. The next few days were a strange mix of excitement and nerves. I kept replaying the night over and over, wondering if Leo felt the same way, or if I'd just imagined all those little glances and that lingering touch. I wasn't exactly smooth when it came to this kind of thing, but something about Leo made me want to try Tuesday. Came around and, well, there was a text from him sitting in my inbox. "Hey, hope the week's treating you well. Want to grab coffee after class tomorrow?" My heart did a little somersault. After checking my schedule twice, I texted back a yes. The next night, I found myself back in the studio, but this time not just to dance. After class, Leo and I walked to a nearby cafe, one of those cozy spots with dim lighting and way too many plants. We claimed a corner table and ordered coffee, black for him, some overly sweet caramel thing for me. We talked about everything and nothing, his move to Portland from New York, my endless obsession with video games, and somehow, we ended up on the topic of why I even signed up for the workshop in the first place. To be honest, I admitted, I thought dancing was something I'd never be good at. But then there was this part of me that wanted to prove I could do it, you know? And maybe also to figure out why I get so nervous around people like you. Leo laughed, that easy, genuine laugh that made me feel like I'd just shared something important. "People like me?" "Yeah," I said, cheeks heating up. Confident, charming, and way too good at making a guy feel like he's the only one in the room. He looked down at his coffee, stirring it slowly, and for a second I thought maybe I'd gone too far. But then he looked back up, eyes serious but soft. "I get nervous too," he said quietly. "Especially with someone like you." That caught me off guard. Me? Nervous? I was usually the one playing it cool. But with Leo, all my usual defenses felt like they were melting away. "So, what does someone like me do when they're nervous?" I asked, half joking, but also genuinely curious. "Keep showing up," he said simply, "and keep trusting." The way he said it made those words feel like a promise, even if we hadn't said anything out loud. Over the next week, the dance workshops became the highlight of my days. I found myself looking forward to them, not just for the dancing, but for the moments with Leo, the small touches, the way he'd correct my form with a gentle hand on my waist, the way his eyes would light up when I finally nailed a step. One evening, after class, Leo suggested we walk along the waterfront. The city was glowing with the golden hues of sunset, and the air was crisp but not cold. We strolled side by side, the sound of the river mingling with distant chatter. At some point, our hands brushed. Neither of us pulled away, and before I realized what was happening, his fingers were entwined with mine. "I wasn't sure if you'd be okay with this," he said softly. "Honestly, I wasn't sure either," I admitted, "but it feels right." He smiled, that same warm smile, and squeezed my hand gently. "Good, because I want to see where this goes." Those words settled over me like a gentle wave. I felt a mix of fear and hope. Fear of getting hurt, hope of something real. But mostly, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in a long time. A few days later, during a particularly slow song in class, Leo pulled me close again. This time, there was no hesitation, no second guessing. Just two people moving in sync, learning the steps, and maybe a little more, together. When the music stopped, he held me a moment longer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad you took that chance." "Me too," I said, heart pounding. From that moment on, dancing wasn't just about the steps anymore. It was about trust, connection, and the messy, beautiful thing called falling for someone. And honestly, I was ready to see where it led, one step at a time. After that night, things between Leo and me started to feel less like a tentative dance and more like a real rhythm, messy at times, but definitely something worth following. We still had the workshops, of course, but outside of class, we began to spend more time together. Coffee dates turned into long walks, and sometimes late-night talks that stretched until the city fell silent. One evening, a few days after our waterfront walk, Leo invited me over to his place. I was nervous, not just because it was the first time I'd been to his apartment, but because I wasn't sure where us was headed. Was this just casual? More than that? Something I needed to be ready for? I told myself to relax, but that's easier said than done when you're about to cross a line you didn't even know was there. When I arrived, his place was exactly how you'd imagine for someone like him. Minimalist, but warm, with art on the walls and a record player softly spinning some old jazz. He greeted me with that easy smile and a hug that felt like home. "Glad you made it," he said. "Me too," I replied, suddenly feeling shy. We settled on the couch, and Leo pulled out a couple of beers. We talked about music, movies, our weird childhood obsessions, all the stuff that makes two people start to feel like they've known each other forever. Then, without really planning it, he reached over and took my hand. I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned to look at him, trying to read the expression on his face. "Jake," he said softly, "I've been wanting to do this for a while." Then he leaned in, and our lips met. It wasn't some movie-perfect kiss. It was a little tentative, a little fumbling, but honest. It felt like the first step of a dance you've been afraid to try, but can't wait to learn. Afterwards, we stayed wrapped up together on the couch, the kind of quiet that feels full without needing words. I realized I was smiling like an idiot, and when Leo caught my eye, he laughed. "You're smiling." "Yeah, well, you kinda just made my week." He smiled back, that warmth spreading between us like sunlight. For the next few weeks, we fell into a rhythm that felt natural. We didn't rush anything. We just let things unfold. We kept dancing, both literally and figuratively, learning each other's moves, stumbling occasionally, but always trying again. But as much as I wanted to believe this was all smooth sailing, real life has a way of sneaking in. One afternoon, a few weeks after that first kiss, I invited Leo over for dinner. I was trying out a new recipe, pretending I was some kind of chef, even though I mostly just followed instructions. As we sat eating, the conversation drifted to our families. I haven't really told mine about us, I admitted, swallowing a bite of pasta. Leo nodded, his expression thoughtful. Me neither. My family's pretty traditional. I'm not sure how they'd react. The truth hit me harder than I expected. We were cautiously stepping into something real, but there were still walls, some built by our own fears, others by the world we lived in. Do you think it'll be a problem? I asked. He shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Maybe, but I think it'll be worth it. That night, as I walked him to the door, I realized how much I wanted to believe that too. That whatever came next, this was worth fighting for. Not everything was perfect. There were moments where I doubted myself, where I wondered if I was moving too fast or not fast enough. But every time Leo held me close, or laughed at one of my lame jokes, or looked at me like I was the only person in the world, those doubts faded. One chilly evening, after class, Leo pulled me aside. His face was serious but soft. "Jake," he said, "I want you to meet someone. My best friend, Marco. He's been asking about you." I wasn't sure what to expect, but when Marco showed up, a tall guy with an infectious grin and a quick wit, I found myself liking him immediately. It was a good sign, I thought, that Leo wanted me to be part of his world, not just the dance studio. As the months went by, our relationship deepened. We celebrated little victories. Me mastering a complicated move, him landing a gig as a choreographer. We supported each other through setbacks and life's messy bits. And through it all, dancing remained our way of connecting, a way to say things without words. One night, after an especially amazing class, Leo took my hand and led me to the center of the studio. The mirrors reflected the city lights behind us, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world had shrunk to just the two of us. "Jake," he said, voice low, "thank you for trusting me." "I'm glad I did," I whispered back, and as the music started, we danced. Close, together, perfectly imperfect. Sometimes, signing up for something new leads you exactly where you're supposed to be. I just never expected it would start with a dance, and a hold that lasted a little too long. After that night in the studio, where Leo thanked me for trusting him, I felt like I was finally stepping into a chapter of my life I hadn't dared to open before. But as much as things felt right between us, life has a sneaky way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. A couple of weeks later, Leo invited me to one of his dance performances. It was at this smaller, artsy theater downtown, the kind that feels intimate enough that you can see every bead of sweat and every flash of emotion on the dancers' faces. I was excited but also kind of nervous, partly because I wanted to be there for him, and partly because I wasn't sure what it meant to cross over from workshop guy to someone who actually shows up in the crowd. The theater buzzed with energy as the lights dimmed and the music started. Leo's choreography was incredible, raw and powerful, but with this graceful fluidity that made it obvious he put everything into it. Watching him move on stage, I realized there was so much more beneath the instructor's easy smile I'd come to know. He wasn't just teaching steps, he was telling stories with every leap and turn. After the performance, we met backstage. He was flushed with adrenaline, his hair damp, eyes bright. He pulled me into a hug that felt like a lifeline. "You came," he said, voice a bit breathless. "I wouldn't have missed it," I replied, smiling. "You were amazing." We ended up at a late-night diner, sitting in a booth that felt like a safe little bubble away from the crowd. Over greasy fries and coffee, Leo told me about his dreams, opening his own studio, traveling with a dance company, maybe even choreographing for Broadway someday. I listened, feeling proud and a little awestruck. "You've got big plans," I said. He shrugged, kinda shy now. "I'm scared too. But it's better than wondering what if." That line stuck with me. It was the kind of truth that wasn't just about dance. It was about life, about taking chances, about being brave enough to let someone in. But not everything was perfect. A few days after that night, I caught myself overthinking a text from Leo. It was short, a simple, "Sorry, got caught up with work. Can we talk later?" But my mind spiraled. Was he pulling away? Was I moving too fast? Did I misread everything? I didn't want to be that guy, the clingy, needy one. But I also didn't want to lose whatever this was. So I waited, trying to play it cool, but the doubt gnawed at me. When we finally talked, Leo sounded exhausted but honest. "Work's been insane," he said. "I'm sorry if I've been distant." "I get it," I said. "Just missed you." He sighed, and I could hear the weight in his voice. "I missed you too. I don't want to mess this up." "I don't want that either," I said. "We're figuring it out, right?" "Yeah," he said, and I could tell he meant it. That moment was messy and real, and it made me realize that love isn't always a smooth dance. Sometimes it's stepping on toes. Sometimes it's catching your breath, and sometimes it's just showing up even when you're tired or scared. One weekend, Leo invited me to a family gathering. I was nervous. Meeting the family is always a big step, especially when you're still learning how to be comfortable in your own skin. But when I arrived, I was welcomed with warmth and laughter. His sister teased him about being secretive, and his mom gave me a hug that felt like permission to be part of their world. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments and some subtle questions about the future. But Leo stood by me, squeezing my hand under the table, and I knew we were in this together. Life outside the dance studio kept moving too. Work was busy, friends were asking about my dance instructor boyfriend, and I was trying to balance all the new pieces of this unexpected puzzle. One night, after a particularly grueling day, I found myself at Leo's door, just needing him there. When he opened it, he pulled me inside without a word. We sat on the couch, no music, no dancing, just quiet. And somehow, that silence was exactly what I needed. Sometimes, Leo said, breaking the quiet, it's not about the steps or the rhythm. It's about knowing someone's there when the music stops. I nodded, feeling my guard finally come down for good. From awkward workshop beginner to this, someone who'd found not just a dance partner, but something real. Wasn't how I saw my life playing out. But honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because love, like dance, might be uncertain, messy, and complicated. But when you find the right person to hold you close, even for too long, it's worth every step. A few weeks after that quiet night on his couch, things between Leo and me started to grow in ways I hadn't really anticipated. We were comfortable, too comfortable, maybe, with the easy rhythm of our days. But I felt this itch in my chest, like I was waiting for something to shift, to deepen, or even just to get harder, because love that's always easy feels like it's missing something real. One Friday, after class, Leo surprised me by pulling me aside. His usual confident smile was softer, more vulnerable. "Hey, you want to grab a drink? Some more quiet?" I hesitated for a second. Was this just hanging out, or did he want to talk about something? We ended up at a little hole-in-the-wall bar, the kind with exposed brick and low lighting. Music so quiet you could really hear your own thoughts. We sat close, the air between us charged but calm. So Leo started, swirling his drink. "I've been thinking about the dance showcase coming up next month." "Yeah," I said, curious. "It's a big deal for me. I'm choreographing the whole thing, and I want you to be a part of it." My stomach flipped. Me? In a showcase? I wasn't exactly the most graceful guy out there. "Are you serious? I mean, you know I'm still figuring out how not to step on your toes." He laughed, then reached for my hand. "That's exactly why I want you there. Because I see you learning, growing. Because you're not afraid to try, even when it's scary." I blinked, feeling something warm spread through me. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll do it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of rehearsals, late nights, and a lot of fumbling through steps. But every time I felt like giving up, Leo was there, patient, encouraging, pushing me just enough. We spent hours practicing lifts and spins, his hand steady on my back, guiding me through moves I never imagined I could pull off. One rehearsal, we were working on a particularly tricky sequence, and I was struggling to keep up. I tripped, almost falling, and before I hit the floor, Leo caught me. Our faces were inches apart, and for a heartbeat, everything else disappeared. "Got you," he whispered. The tenderness in his voice made my heart pound. I wanted to say something, but words felt useless. Instead, I just nodded and let him pull me back into the rhythm. As the showcase approached, the tension in the studio was tangible. Everyone was focused, nerves buzzing under the surface. But with Leo, I felt calm, like no matter what happened, we were in it together. The night of the showcase arrived quickly. Backstage, the air was thick with anticipation. I was dressed in a simple black outfit, feeling more exposed than I ever had on stage. Leo gave me a quick nod and a smile that melted away some of my fear. When the music started, I took a deep breath and followed his lead. The moves came faster than I expected, my body remembering the countless hours of practice. Every time our hands met, every time he pulled me close, I felt more alive than I'd ever been. By the final sequence, I was sweating and breathless, but the applause that erupted when we finished made it all worth it. Leo pulled me into a hug that made the world feel right. Afterward, as we packed up, a few people came over to congratulate me. I caught Leo's eye, and he gave me that proud grin that made me feel like I'd just won a gold medal. But it wasn't just about the dance. It was about trust, courage, and the way two people could hold on to each other through every misstep. A few days later, we were sitting on his balcony, the city lights stretching out below us. Leo reached over and took my hand, his eyes searching mine. "Jake," he said, voice soft, what we have, it's real, right?" I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Yeah, real as it gets." He leaned in, and I kissed him gently, feeling the promise in that moment. No matter where the dance took us next, I knew I wanted to keep moving forward, with him. After the showcase, something shifted between us, not in a dramatic, earth-shattering way, but in the quiet, meaningful moments that made me realize this wasn't just a fling or some dance floor crush. It was real. We kept dancing, of course, sometimes in the studio, sometimes in the living room, and sometimes just slow dancing in the kitchen while dinner simmered on the stove. I started to see dance the way Leo did, not just a series of steps, but a kind of conversation without words, a way to be close without pressure, a way to trust someone enough to let your guard down. One evening, a few weeks after the showcase, Leo and I were sitting on his couch, sprawled out between half-finished takeout boxes and a mess of dance DVDs. The city hummed outside the window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. Leo looked over at me, that familiar spark in his eyes. "You know," he said, "when you first signed up for that workshop, I didn't expect you to stick around." I laughed, nudging him playfully. "Yeah? What changed your mind?" "You," he said, simply. "Your willingness to show up, even when it was scary. Your honesty. And, well, I guess I just didn't expect to fall for the guy who thought he had two left feet." I smiled, feeling warmth spread through me. Guess we both surprised each other. We sat there for a while, letting the quiet settle around us. I thought about how far I'd come, from nervous beginner to someone who could finally say, without hesitation, that I was in a relationship that challenged me, supported me, and made me feel alive. It wasn't perfect. We had our disagreements, our awkward moments, our days when life felt like too much. But the difference was that we faced those things together, hand in hand, just like we did on the dance floor. Looking back, I realized that first night in the studio, the moment Leo held me a little too close for comfort, was the beginning of everything. That unexpected closeness, that hesitation, was the first step toward something that changed my life. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because sometimes, the best dances happen when you let yourself be held, even when it feels a little scary. And sometimes, the person who holds you too close is exactly the one you've been waiting for.